welcome to the Clackamas County Republican Party's debate of the House District 39 primary candidates. I want to thank you all for coming, and if Paul Carlson would come up and please lead us in invocation.
Father God, thank you so much for this time we can come together this evening and hear from our wonderful candidates. Thank you for this country and the freedom that we can enjoy. Thank you for all those who paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can have this freedom and our right to vote, to put people in office, to further this country, our community. Thank you for each and every candidate here. Thanks for all the folks that are here. And we just ask that you would bless this evening. And thanks for all that you've done. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. Now, if you please remain standing. Got too quick. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now you may all be seated. A couple little quick housekeeping things. If you haven't already found the cookies and coffee and water, they're right over there. Please help yourself. Restrooms, if you haven't found them, there's some down this hallway to your right and also out the hall on your right as you're coming in by the top of the stairs. Those are essential things to know, so I thought I'd let you know. So here we are trying to pick our candidate to go into November and replace our esteemed Representative Bill Kennemer, who is here tonight. So he gave 31 years to public service, and I think he deserves a big round of applause for that. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. And we have some big shoes to fill, so I also want to thank our 4 candidates for their willingness to serve and campaign. It's grueling at times, but it is worth it. Okay, we have picked the order of candidates. I do want to have a few thank yous. I want to thank Frank Cutsforth and Cutsforth Thriftway for the use of this space. And our question team, Senator Alan Olson, Representative Bill Kennemer, Canby Area Chamber of Commerce, Providence Hospital, Oregon Firearms Federation, Trip Goodall, the superintendent of Canby School District, and the Clackamas County Republican Party Executive Committee. That's who brought these questions to you tonight. So the order of candidates for the opening statement. I will, this little roving mic, so you don't have to try and play behind the seats here. You could just stand in your spot and use this microphone. And Ken Kraft is represented tonight by his campaign manager, Lindsay Burschauer. Stand so they can see.
Can y'all hear me? Oh, yes, I can hear me. So I'm Lindsay Burschauer. I'm the president of Leona Consulting Company, and I am here volunteering for Ken Kraft's campaign. Commander Kraft wishes he could be here tonight. He had a Veterans Committee meeting tonight that he couldn't get out of, but he wishes he could be here to talk to you all. So I'll just introduce him briefly. Commander Kraft is a tested leader who is ready to serve the committees of House District 39. As a veteran and combat amputee, he has led countless military missions and operations while overseeing tens of thousands of troops. Many of these life and death decisions that Commander Kraft led from the front lines. As a United States Army captain, he earned a Bronze Star after being injured in the Iraq War, and after multiple surgeries, he is now a combat amputee. Since returning, he has committed himself to serving his fellow veterans and his community. Commander Kraft has served as a former senior correctional deputy with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department and is the state commander for the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the Western Conference chairman. He is the former chair of the Clackamas County Veterans Advisory Committee that works directly with the Clackamas County Commission on local veterans issues. Ken also serves on the steering committee for the Military Children Education Coalition and has founded endowments to assist students attending Clackamas County College. He is also a Shriner and a Master Mason. As an MBA graduate, Commander Kraft is pro-business, pro-community, and pro-family. Those kind of go hand in hand. He is opposed to wasteful tax increases and state spending. He believes the state needs elected officials who understand what it takes to run a business as well as raise a family here. Commander Kraft is a relentless advocate for our veterans. He supports the Second Amendment and he is pro-life, earning the endorsement of Oregon Right to Life. As a fifth-generation Oregonian, Ken supports our agriculture industry as well as our sportsmen and anglers, being a fisherman and hunter himself. He will support legislation that advocates for responsible and sustainable forestry practices. As you can imagine, Commander Kraft supports the Second Amendment and opposes any infringement or law that infringes upon the rights of lawfully abiding gun owners. Working with the veterans community in Oregon, Commander Kraft has found himself at the intersection of many public policies, from housing to healthcare, mental health, the opioid crisis, and unemployment. He can see how changes in one area can affect another. Our veteran population unfortunately makes up a high percentage of our suicide rate, our homeless population, and those susceptible to opioid abuse due to PTSD and other issues. Just as our former state representative Bill Kennemer, he will be a strong advocate for improved mental health policies and connectivity and consistency in our communities. Commander Kraft founded the Homeless Veterans Survival Bag Program that offers a vet a duffel bag packed with basic necessities and works towards getting them housing, appropriate medical care, and job training. If Commander Kraft were here tonight, he would say simply, "If you want a tested leader, then I'm ready to serve." Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. I did forget to mention, you did great on time. I did forget to mention, we do actually have a timer right here in the front, so pay attention to him, and you have 30 seconds left. He has a card, and then when you hear the tone, you'll be kindly asked to be quiet. Okay, next up we have John Lee. I suppose this is helpful. There you go.
I usually stand, but there's not a whole bunch of room here.
The
I want to
camera
first
might be
thank
better.
Tracy and the Clackamas County Republican Party for putting this event together. I know that all of the candidates are very appreciative of that effort, and I want to thank you all for spending this evening to get to know us a little bit better. Many, if not most of you, know me from the long years that I've served in the Clackamas County Republican Party. I was your vice chair for 5 years, your chairman for 4. I'm currently the Oregon Republican Party state treasurer, and I've been an elected PCP for over 20 years. I've stood in front of you many times and asked, are we relevant? And at one time, the Clackamas County Republican Party wasn't. But I'm proud to say that yes, we are relevant in both Clackamas and in House District 39. I'm proud of the many issues and things that we've been able to do over the last decade and a half. From leading the fight on the unprecedented vehicle registration fee that would pay for a bridge, the Selwood Bridge in Multnomah County, owned and operated in Multnomah County, a vehicle registration fee that could be raised without a vote of the people, to the fight for light rail and urban renewal growth without a vote of the people. We put it on the ballot and we won. Each of these now require a vote of the people. We've won each of those with over 60% of the votes. We certainly don't have 60% Republicans in House District 39 or Clackamas County. We've got those votes because we had issues that the people believed in and wanted to follow. We passed the sheriff's local option levy with the largest margin ever. Why? Because funding the sheriff is the right thing to do, and it's part of our obligation. And the Republican Party stood behind the sheriff to make that happen. We focused on winning nonpartisan elections, city councils, school boards, fire boards, water boards, and even a cemetery board. I even practiced what we preached. I ran and have been elected twice to the Boring Water Board for 2 4-year terms. I've been elected as a director to the Boring Community Planning Organization, and I'm currently their treasurer. Over the last 20 years, I've been appointed to numerous political and civic committees. I've served you, the citizens of House District 39. These were not always easy battles, but as a servant leader, I was able to make signs, put up signs, train candidates, be active in the party for you and for every citizen in House District 39. I've also demonstrated this leadership for over 35 years in business. I've started companies, I've grown many companies, I've been on the fastest growing list 18 times. Initially, I was trained as a laser physicist, but I soon found that, no, I'm really an entrepreneur. So I've started companies and I've grown companies. Today, I help family businesses implement best practices and implement an infrastructure of a $100 million company in $1 to $30 million companies. Why? Because that's where our jobs come from. We need them to thrive, not just survive. And many in Oregon are just surviving. I believe that this process, my experience, is intimately transferable to Salem. I believe in an effective government. We need to do the right things. I believe in an efficient government. We need to do the right things for less money. And I believe in a transparent government. Why? Because transparency will hold me, an elected official, accountable. It will hold every employee of our state accountable. Let there be no doubt, I am pro-life and religious freedom. I'm pro-Second Amendment, and I'm pro-fiscal responsibility. Thank you again for coming tonight.
And Christine Drazen.
I actually don't think everybody can see me if I don't stand. So I would like to start by thanking Tracy Hensley and the Clackamas County Republicans again. Thank you for doing all the work that you do for our community and for the county. And thank you for doing this tonight. And again, I'd like to thank Representative Bill Kennemer and his wife Sherry for their years of service to our community. I'm running to be your next state representative in House District 39 because I want to make a difference. As a fourth-generation Oregonian, I am committed to my community and my state. I have spent my career serving our state as the gatekeeper for legislation and budget negotiations in the Republican Speaker of the House's office and helping small businesses, whether in my role with the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association or as an executive working with nonprofits that cross the state. I am a reformer who will fight for you. I've seen firsthand the challenge of regulatory creep and the growth of government, and I understand that it's taxpayers, that it's families and businesses like all of you and our family that are the ones who will pay the price. When I talk about the real financial impacts of cap and trade, I am speaking from personal experience, watching these environmental activists push till they shut down far too many mills, far too many small towns throughout rural Oregon, and put far too many families out of work, including mine as a kid. I know firsthand how bad public policy and judicial overreach can hurt families. It's not rhetoric, it's experience. I will fight to make government accountable. I will oppose new laws that pursue political agendas at the expense of Oregon families and local jobs. When I talk about class sizes and graduation rates, it's not academic. It's real life for us. We have a house full of kids in public schools here, and like you and your families, we know that this time is precious and that every single school year where we lose kids who don't graduate, it's a wasted year. And it impacts all of us. So we don't have time to waste. Our students need us to fix these problems now. Our communities need us to fix these problems now. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm not running to make friends in Salem. I have lots of good friends, and thank you guys for being here tonight. But I am running to make a difference. And I will promote policies that foster economic growth and prosperity for local families and businesses, because we have to fight together. And especially right now, we have to fight efforts to raise taxes on small businesses and hardworking families. They don't need the money in Salem. I am running to represent our conservative values, our priorities, our families, and our jobs. If you take a quick look at my list of endorsements, you will see I am asking for the support of the people I will serve. Endorsements are funny things. They give a glimpse into a person's loyalties and their priorities. And let me just be really clear. Mine are to the people of this district. My voters, you guys are my priority. I will be loyal to you. My husband and I moved here 20 years ago to put down roots and raise our kids. And I have an unwavering commitment to this district and these communities. We need to send people to Salem with conservative principles, a heart for Oregon, who can get the kinds of things done that a mom with 3 kids can do. I'm a reformer who will fight for you, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Seth Allen Ridmark.
Thank you, and thank you, Tracy, for putting this on. My name is Seth Ridmark. I was born and raised in Clackamas County. I live right here in Canby. I currently work in mental health. I've been working in mental health for about 8 years now. I work at the Providence Hospital up in Portland in the emergency room. So we're working with patients who come in experiencing a mental health crisis of some kind, depression and suicidal, psychotic and hallucinating. We deal with a lot of foster children with behavioral issues, a lot of drug addiction, a lot of the homeless population up in Portland, which will include at times when we're trying to stabilize a patient, medications, and often even physically restraining. It can be a challenging job, but I enjoy it. It can be also be very rewarding. And I'm running because this is my home. And I go around campaigning and I'm talking to voters, people who have been here their whole life or for decades, telling me that they are thinking about leaving Oregon. They love their community. They love the community atmosphere of Canby and Damascus and all over this district, but they can't afford the high cost of living, the rent. They can't get their business started. We've seen the issues in downtown Canby with businesses struggling. And it's because we have politicians in Salem, namely Democrats, who are more interested in asking questions, the questions about what can we do to take more from a taxpayer? What more can we take from the community to grow the bureaucracy in Salem? The questions we should be asking is what can we do to foster economic growth and to have the Salem legislature be an asset to our communities once again. And if I can just say what a privilege it is to be up here with 4 incredible candidates. I couldn't have asked for 3 better individuals to be running a Republican primary with. So thank you all.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, so that the audience understands what's going on, and the next portion is the question and answer portion. I have already sent the candidates the questions so they have prepared answers, which was helpful for Commander Kraft to be able to send answers so that those answers could get published. And I did actually put in that email, if you remember, no particular order, and so they may not be in the same order. I'll try to at least give you the topics so you can find them in your notes, because when I emailed them, then I wrote them on cards, and I don't think the cards are in the same order, to be honest with you. So we're going to start with the small business question. We've drawn numbers, and so they're going to start by going in this order, and then the second question, we're going to rotate who goes first, so no one person has the last word all of the time. That's the theory behind it. So starting us off with the small business question is Ken Kraft or Lindsay.
Can you please clarify what the small business question is?
I'm going to ask the question so the audience hears it as well, but I just kind of wanted you to be able to find it in your notes, okay? So most people are employed by small businesses. Why should small business owners support your campaign, and how would you promote the interests of small business owners as the representative from House District 39?
We don't have that question, but I can ad-lib it for you.
You don't? I could have sworn I got them all. Well, there you go. There's your impromptu question.
Okay, so since we've never heard the question,
I
please
will
repeat
read
the
it
question.
one more time. Boy, we're going really great out of the gate here, aren't we? Okay. Most people are employed by small businesses. Why should small business owners support your campaign, and how would you promote the interests of small business owners as a representative from District 39?
Well, I want to start by saying that I'm not going to speak verbatim of Ken Kraft because he answered his own questions and this wasn't one of them, but I will say that we just got done fighting Senate Bill 1528. And if you know anything about Senate Bill 1528, Originally, it included the repeal of the small business tax cut, which is it allows small businesses that employ at least one person to have at least a 2% reduction on their tax rate. So in essence, they're paying less money or equal to those of the large corporations in our state. If you don't have an employee, like I don't, you are paying a higher effective tax rate than large corporations in this state, and that has to change. This is the third time we have defended the small business tax cut. And Governor Kate Brown's response was to pass over $1 billion in new taxes on small businesses by disconnecting from President Donald Trump's and the Congress's tax reforms. So you will receive a 20% deduction on your federal, but you do not get that on your state. That's a tax increase. We consider that a tax increase, and it was passed without 3/5 vote, which is a constitutional requirement. So we continue to fight that, and I think in my conversations with Commander Kraft, he is absolutely 100% on board, and I think feels that small businesses need a louder voice. We have organizations like OBI and some of these large business, large industry groups, but the small business owners that make up the backbone of our economy, we don't have a unified voice against some of this stuff. So I think that we need some folks to go down there and really be loud advocates for small business, and I think that's exactly what he will do.
Okay, thank you. Christine, same question. I'll read it again since you guys didn't have time to prepare. Most people are employed by small businesses. Why should small business owners support your campaign? And how would you promote the interests of small business owners as the representative from District 39?
So I would like to say that when I worked at the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association for 6 years, one of the things that organization does is represent a lot of mom and pop restaurants and a lot of small businesses. And some of the issues that they were impacted by, as you can imagine, were everything, right? Transportation taxes, when you increase minimum wage, when you mandate what the work schedule is going to look like and how far out the work schedule has to be. I mean, these are not issues that bypass small businesses. And with the small margins that restaurants have, just like farmers, I mean, tiny, tiny little margins, some of these changes have dramatic negative impacts on small businesses. And so my work when I was there was to really rally these folks and get them to recognize that there is no replacing their voice in Salem. You know, I say sometimes, I'm running to represent you, I'm not running to replace you. The best thing that we can do is have an open, collaborative, communicative relationship where I say, this is crazy sauce, come on down, testify, we need your voice in Salem, and communicate. And I will be there to support that message and oppose those bills, but there's no replacing you guys. There is no replacing the business owner coming down and saying, hey, I have 3 employees, and this is what this does to my business. And so if you take a look at some of the stuff we know is coming, it's not pretty. Cap and trade is going to leave no one unscathed. There's nobody that's going to avoid that if that thing passes. It has to be stopped. So we talk about what the governor's done and her terrible decision, and we talk about, you know, some of the legal actions they might take and against that bill, but there's more coming. And so what I would do is I would say, let's work together on this. There's a lot to be done because there's a lot at risk. Thank you.
Do you remember the question, or do you need it again?
Oh, I think we can play with this one.
Okay.
I am small business. I have an LLC that's taxed as an S Corp. I have a C Corp. I help small business. That's what my job is, to help them grow. When I think of small business, you think of the solopreneur up to the small manufacturing company. I recently helped a company in Hubbard, just outside our border. They're a foundry and they're a forging company, so heavy industry. They have trouble finding employees. They have trouble finding welders. They just can't find them. Minimum wage makes a huge difference to them. What's important to them, though, was being able to survive. They'd gone from about 35 million to 20 million. Mom had died. Dad didn't want to do it anymore. The 2 brothers were in civil war. We were able to go in, help them set up a a board, a true board. I came in as an outsourced VP of sales and marketing. I grew their sales team. We brought in a temporary CEO, and now one of the brothers has taken over as CEO. I spent about 10, 11 months with them. They'll do 30 million this year. They employ 144 people. That's what we need to do as small business. We need to be their voice. We need to be a voice in Salem for them. Most jobs don't come from Intel. Most jobs don't come from OHSU. Most jobs come from my companies I work with, and small solopreneurs. Wages, minimum wage, critically important. But disengaging from the federal government's tax bill has to be rebuilt. We need to do that. Thank you.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think one of the first steps we can take, one major step, is to stop the reckless spending in Salem. The more that Salem takes, the more that Salem spends, the more they're going to have to take from somewhere. It ends up being small businesses because they don't have the lobby power to keep their taxes low. They end up giving out their tax breaks, like, to Intel and Providence, where I work, and other places. So we need to give small businesses a voice again in Salem because they don't have that. The minimum wage requirements and the nickel and diming, the new healthcare tax that was passed, all this stuff adds up, and small businesses and the family wage jobs end up going away because of it. This is an important issue. It's affecting downtown Canby. It's affecting this entire district, and I'll fight for a better, more equitable tax law that actually works for small businesses and for families.
Okay. You boys good on the timing? Apparently we have a timing team here. Asher's joined in. Okay, Christine will answer the second question first. This is the cap and trade question. I did look at the email. That question that I just asked was the only one that didn't get sent, and I apologize again. The rest of these you should have. So there's the cap and trade question. 2 minutes. In the last 3 sessions, Democrats have pushed a cap and invest bill that will cost Oregonians at least $1,000 annually per household and higher fuel and food prices. The $700 million per year collected will be spent throughout the state on CO2 reducing projects. Do you feel this redistribution of wealth is a wise investment, and how does it benefit Oregonians?
Thank you. Some people might think that they know what cap and trade is, but I'm gonna tell you what I think it is. I think it is Salem making a play for our money and using the environment to do it. They say that cap and trade is about saving the planet, but really it's about money. And so let's be honest, it really is all about the money. Cap and trade is Oregon standing alone as a single state bureaucratic solution. I know they say that they can trade with California and British Columbia, but this really is Oregon doing its thing, and it's not going to make a dent in climate change, but it will fund a laundry list of pet projects. The list is serious, guys. I mean, $700 million a year is $1.4 billion in a biennium that they spend. They budget biennially, so we're talking housing, higher ed. I mean, you name it. It's kind of whatever they didn't get a fund on their own with general fund coming out of cap and trade. It's ugly. Cap and trade is the poster child for misguided proposals that will put our stable economy at risk. It's a taxing scheme, and it harms our poorest citizens, our families, and our businesses with a new tax they cannot afford. And I want to say, I think this is going to be especially hard on rural Oregonians who drive. I mean, if you're in downtown Portland and you can not pay the extra cost, it's going to be on your fuel bills every month. You can hop on the max. I think that's really different than it is for people who live a distance from places. This is going to be brutal in rural Oregon. So these programs are intended by design to increase the price of energy, and this plan is no exception. Cap and tax will not fix climate change, but it will create a wild spending spree to advance fringe groups and extreme ideology. Take a look around. Oregon is a clean state. I don't think we're a part of the problem, but I do think that this could hurt real people. Cap and tax, I think, will cost jobs, just like my dad's job in Klamath Falls when I was a kid, when they shut down the mills there. I think we can steward Oregon's environment without sacrificing jobs or putting our economy at risk. Yes, the ding.
First time. Okay.
And Christine's right. It won't do a darn thing. Going back to my business experience, I often ask what's working and what's not working. And if it's not working and you continue to do it, that's insane. This has been tried in BC. They've now reversed it. They're going away from it. It doesn't work. All it is taking money out of your pocket and putting it into someone else's. $1,000, that's pretty conservative. That's very conservative. It will touch every person in the state. Transportation costs, gas, electricity. It is a bait and switch. They're just taking our money to go to their pet projects. If we stopped all CO2 emissions today in Oregon, it will make absolutely no difference to the global community. I used to travel to China. I've seen pollution where I couldn't see the building across the street. Even if you don't believe in anthropologic global warming, man-made global warming, even if you do believe in it, it's not going to make a difference. This is just a tax and spend. It's not cap and trade, it's cap and tax.
Well, I completely agree, and this is nothing more than politicians experimenting with our money. We've seen what happens when at the federal level with Solyndra taking money and investing in green, business startups, and it was a scam. And even if I don't personally even adhere to the liberal climate change narrative. So this idea that we can take money from hardworking Oregonians, put it in the pockets of politicians, and let them decide who gets it, it's the very essence of government corruption.
There's two things I want to say that strike me as ironic, because we all watched during the summer the wildfires that happen in this state and in Northern California, and you sit there and you think, how can they completely ignore their policies that govern forestry and their forest practices while we watch this happen, and the pollution is so much worse than what they're trying to reduce over the next 2 decades. The other thing I want to say is it's interesting because they're saying that California now, because of their gas prices, could be shifting politically. So I think that's an interesting dichotomy when you factor in what Oregon is planning to do. Ken did take the time to answer each one of these questions, so I do want to read his response verbatim. He said, these programs, like the Business Energy Tax Credit Program, have proven to be cronyism at its worst, robbing taxpayers of their money and getting no measurable outcomes for the money wasted. All this proposal does is drive up the cost for consumers, lining the pockets of those in the know and about how to get these contracts in the first place, and does nothing measurable to help the environment. And I think one of the things that we've talked about is how, just on a basic level, how gross the policy is, because you are literally taxing the poorest Oregonians for this, while you're giving a back door, a way out for the wealthiest Oregonians to avoid paying penalties, even the businesses, large corporations and businesses. So that's where he stands.
Thank you. Okay. And now we'll move into the firearms question. And John will answer this one first. At the federal level, there is a proposed ban on so-called bump stocks and similar devices. Do you support or oppose this proposed ban, and why?
The Second Amendment gives us each the right to bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. It's what our U.S. Constitution says. It's what I believe. The Heller decision reinforced and recognized that right to be a personal right. For many years, they tried to say, oh, no, it's just the militias. No, it's our right. As I understand it, the federal government has now determined that bump stocks simulate fully automatic weapons. And so this question may be moot at this time. What's more important to me really is IP43 and IP44. IP43 is a direct assault to us. It's the banning of assault weapons, whatever that means. Frankly, we tried this again back in the 80s, and it did nothing. If you do the same thing and expect a different result, isn't that insane? IP44 bothers me a lot. I lock up my weapons when I go on vacation. At 2 o'clock in the morning with someone breaking into my house, I really don't want my weapon locked up so that I can protect my family. I don't believe that the government, the state, or any individual has a right to infringe my basic Second Amendment right. Thank you.
Well, I know that this is often an emotional issue, namely because of the tragedy that occurred last year in Las Vegas. But when it comes to bump stocks, the Trump administration and the NRA have both said that they're open to further regulation, not banning, just further regulation of bump stocks, and that is my position.
So when you ask a combat vet about his Second Amendment views, he sort of just take a step back. But his answer, as he stated, is very simple. I support the rights of law-abiding gun owners, and I do not support laws that infringe on their rights, period.
Short and sweet.
So the answer is no. It's that simple. But let me explain. I grew up in a family who valued military service as well, a family of veterans who liked to hunt and fish and who viewed their Second Amendment rights as an individual right to bear arms for both recreation and personal defense. As members of the Canby Rod and Gun Club, responsible use of firearms is a tradition we've passed on to our kids. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I consider the constitutional right to bear arms as fundamental to our freedom. And when it comes to firearms proposals of all shapes and sizes, I won't vote against the values that I was raised with. And I will not infringe on the Constitution that the men and women in our military, like Commander Kraft, have fought for and defended for generations. So I'm gonna have you write down a number. You don't have to, but just keep it in mind. It's 210-238-6139. That's my brother's number. You can feel free to give him a call if you think I'm not serious about defending the Second Amendment. You guys haven't met him, but Sean is a 20-year military veteran with over a dozen deployments in support of everything from Operation Southern Watch to Operation Enduring Freedom, involving multiple tours in Afghanistan and across the Middle East. He's an NRA-certified pistol instructor who founded Close Contact Tactical. It's a family-owned business that provides firearms training to people from all walks of life. And no, he had to move to Texas to start his business. He's a serious guy, but he's a nice guy. And he's my family. And there is no way I would ever vote against his Second Amendment rights, and I certainly won't vote against yours.
Okay, the fourth question, Seth will begin. And here's the question. Our current representative has been a champion of improving access to mental health services and reducing the stigma associated with mental illness. Children routinely spend days in emergency departments waiting for access to acute mental health services. Others wait 6 weeks or more. What would you do as a legislator to increase access to mental health services for children and adults and to reduce the stigma of mental illness? Seth.
Well, this is a very personal issue for me. I work in mental health. And I work in an emergency room, and I see firsthand children brought in, often with behavioral issues, usually under DHS foster care, stuck in a room for days and even weeks on end. You put someone in a room, a 10-foot by 15-foot room for days and weeks on end who already has behavioral issues. They can't go outside, they don't get an education, they're not going to school, and then they act out even more. And I've had to physically hold down children, restrain them. I'm not abusing them, but it is in essence child abuse to keep them there that long. DHS needs to be reformed, first and foremost. And maybe we can get into that later. What can we do to increase access and decrease the stigma? I think the answer comes back to community. You see those signs all around town here in Canby saying things like "You matter" and "Don't give up." We've had some tragedies in Canby recently, some suicides. It's heartbreaking. I think one thing we can do is support our nonprofits locally. It doesn't always have to come from government. I think DHS needs to be reformed, and I think if we are investing grant money into our nonprofits, because what's less stigmatizing? What's more stigmatizing? Walking into a DHS office looking for a handout, or walking into your local pregnancy care center who help support, young single mothers. I think that decreases the stigma, and I think it also helps because our nonprofits locally know how to serve the community best, not some big bureaucratic DHS system that we currently have.
Thank you, Seth. I really liked what you had to say. And I think that's one of the reasons that Dennis Richardson was elected as Secretary of State, because people are so concerned about this issue and as it relates to the foster care system. I will read Commander Kraft's response. As a combat veteran, I've seen firsthand how unchecked mental health can rip apart families and accounts for Oregon's high suicide rate. Last year, 84% of gun deaths were suicide, and a significant portion of them were veteran suicide. And he talks about this quite often because he actually goes and visits those families in our community when something like that happens here. We need to work to increase providers in Oregon, either by recruiting people from other states and helping them with license reciprocity to work in Oregon, incentivizing people to go into mental health fields with tuition reimbursement, and properly investing in mental health. Moreover, as a former sheriff's deputy in corrections, I saw firsthand how many people were in our county jails whose base problem that led to them committing a crime was an underlying mental health issue that had been left unchecked. We'd reduce prison costs if we can connect more people more quickly to the mental health system.
So I agree with these folks. Mental health is an issue that touches all of us. Whether we recognize it or not, whether we know the folks who are in our families or in our extended families are struggling with this, it's out there. It's in our communities. And again, I want to applaud Representative Kennemer for standing as an advocate for people who don't always have a voice in this arena. Thank you for the years of work you've done on this. We're fortunate to have had him in Salem working on this issue. And we're also fortunate to have community groups like the National Alliance on Mental Illness here in Clackamas County, that they work every day to reduce the stigma and to bring hope and acceptance and connect these families and folks with community in a way that will help them get through this and connect them with services. So I, like many of you, feel compelled to be a part of the solution in this. I have 2 teenagers at home, quickly going on 3, and when we experienced our suicides here in Canby, it rocked our whole community. It touched everybody. It was shocking, it was devastating, it was heartbreaking, and our whole community rallied, right? Like the signs and the support. Everybody recognized that we need to do something immediately to reach out to our kids and show them that we hear them and we care about them and that we don't want one more life lost. So these challenges test the fabric of our communities and our connections to each other. And so I think that this is absolutely not a partisan issue. I think this is a community-based issue. And I think that to make progress on this, we need to work with our local partners like NAMI, and I think we need to work together on this. To support the advocates and the impacted families in a way that we respond to what they say they need on the front lines. So thank you.
It's an important issue, and you've heard some good ideas and thoughts. When Damage closed, we saw a significant increase in the homeless and a significant decrease in mental health services. It's a decision that was made by the people in Salem. Dennis Richardson, his audits have shown DHS obviously isn't effective or efficient. The same with the foster care. We have to do something about it. There's no way that I'll be as knowledgeable on this issue than you, Bill. And I'm humble enough to know that and to know what I don't know. On many issues, I will lead. On this issue, I'll be a listener and a learner. Thank you.
Okay. Next question will be Commander Kraft's answer to, what strategies would you support to help resolve the looming PERS crisis in Oregon?
Well, we could talk about that all night, but I won't read what he wrote. The courts thus far have been very clear that the legislature can only move forward when it comes to PERS reform, so prospectively. To address PERS, we need to look at fixing the defined benefit for future employees. TriMet, I don't know if any of you read that audit or that article about TriMet and what they did for their unfunded liability, has done this and will eventually be out from under their unfunded liability sooner than they expected. We also need to look at capping pension payments and establishing that the PERS contract is based on the employer who hires an employee, not simply by being a public employee. So if an employee was in Tier 1 or Tier 2 PERS and leaves to go to the private sector and then comes back years later, they'd be in a new tier, not continuing with their old tier.
So looming, she called this a looming PERS crisis. It feels like it's here, right? $25 billion to pay the bill for our public employees over the next 20 years that we don't have the cash in our back pocket to cover. I feel like it's here. So schools, state police, fire, all these budgets are going to be drained to pay for PERS. That's where we're at. So let's start where we can get something done. Let's cap salaries at $100,000 for benefits. Let's move forward with protections for taxpayers so we never again have to pay rock star level lifestyle benefits for surgeons and football coaches. I think that there are some flaws in our system. I believe in public service. I value our teachers, our police, our fire, the ones on the front lines helping our kids in the foster care system that we just talked about. Like, these are folks who are doing the work on the ground to make our communities better. And we have an obligation to the benefits that public employees have earned in the past, but let's be real about this. Private sector employees should not get a better deal than anybody can get. Public sector employees should not get a better deal than anyone can get in the private sector. They just shouldn't. It's not fair. So, and the reason it happens, from my opinion, is that they pump money into the system in advance. I can't even imagine. They basically pay for the boss that they want, that they have interviewed, and that person has said, when I go into office, I will give you very generous pay and benefits. And then they go into office and they negotiate with them for very generous pay and benefits. It's a weird system we have in Oregon. So it shouldn't surprise us that it's broken. That when the governor wanted to resolve the issue, she created a task force. And let me tell you, I looked at the legislative session guide from 2017. There wasn't one single bill on PERS. Not a single bill proposed, failed, nothing, because legislators believe that there's nothing we can do because of what the courts have said. And so this is, I did it again. Can I just say we need reforms now?
This is number one issue, I think, facing our entire state and, frankly, our nation. We have to honor our commitments. There's no way around that. People are dependent upon us. Detroit went bankrupt. They now get 60 cents on the dollar. We don't want to go there. The biggest problem is that PERS is a defined benefit program versus a defined contribution plan, like most of us have, a 401k, where the employee owns the money. That needs to be changed. We heard about TriMet. TriMet has already gone there. Starting last year, the end of last year, 100% of their new employees are in a defined contribution plan, and they will be out of debt much sooner than PERS. There's 5 common sense strategies that I believe will meet constitutional muster. You've already heard about a cap. Yes, let's define a cap. Bellotti should not be getting what he's getting. In 2013, HB 822 passed. It allows non-residents to not pay income tax. Non-resident PERS recipients don't pay income tax. If I give a pension to an employee that lives in, we'll say, Washington, they pay income tax to Oregon. That can be changed. 70% of all public employees receive the 6% requirement match from us. We can't afford that anymore. A phased-in retirement age equal to Social Security's phased in. We can do that. Future spiking. 22,000 current recipients receive more money than their final salary. 22,000. An estimated savings of $350 million from Cascade policy can be saved if we stop spiking. Thank you.
My father's a retired firefighter, so he's on PERS. This needs to be reformed, and I think a lot of retirees, public retirees, understand that. We don't want what happened like in Michigan and other states where the public employee retirement systems completely collapsed and public employees lost their pensions or lost much of it. So it's in their best interest to have it reformed. A lot of the ideas, I'll just repeat, we need to start asking public employees to start contributing to their retirement. Decrease the cost of living raise that retirees receive. Well, and there's, what else was I going to say? Yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. I think we heard the voice of a future voter and what they thought of PERS.
They're going to pay for it.
They're going to pay for it. All right, next question is the graduation rates question, wherever it is in your notes. And where do we live? It's Christine's first on this one, right? You didn't.
Whatever you say.
I think it was Lindsay last time. Ready? Okay. Oregon graduation rates fall far below what our students deserve. What ideas do you have for improving Oregon's graduation rates?
We have to provide more options. I think that we have to give families choices and make those choices financially realistic for them. I don't think one size fits all. We need more scholarships available, tax incentives, open enrollment, private schools, charter schools, alternative schools, and we need to invite community partnerships to provide an education that's well-rounded with some hands-on learning. So I think, assuming you're standing in for Commander Kraft, I think I'm the only one here tonight with kids in public schools. So for me, this is skin in the game stuff at my house, right? As a parent, I'm gonna be honest, I got a little tired of volunteering in classrooms that were so full that there was nowhere for students to sit during reading. Like one student camped out underneath a desk, not okay. Another running circles around the alphabet rug, what are we doing here? It can be chaos, and we're just supposed to accept it. And I'm just tired of parent-teacher conferences being more about fundraising than academics. I don't understand why it's necessary for parents to be both the piggy banks and the extra hands that keep our lower grades running. And we all do it, ladies and men. We show up, and we love to do it because volunteering and being involved in our kids' lives is a privilege, and it's a responsibility. And we need to show up, and we need to do those things. But my point here is that something happens between the time I'm reading with them in the 3rd grade and they stop coming to class in high school. We are paying record amounts for our education in Oregon right now, and something's going off the rails, and we need to figure out what that is. And so let's hire and hold on to the leaders and teachers in our schools that are committed to doing what it takes to help students achieve their learning goals and stay in school. We have great leaders in this district, but they aren't getting the support that they need from Salem. So I would say that their future and our future depends on this. Thank you.
So I have 3 daughters. They all graduated from schools in Oregon, in Westland and in San Barlow. 1 out of 4 high school students starting don't graduate in 4 years. That's absolutely wrong. It's 48th in the country, and it can't be acceptable. When you start looking a little deeper with GEDs in our great community college system, that goes up to 80% in 5 years. But that's still not acceptable. But I'm going to take it a different tact. We have, in the last 10 years, pushed high school students that they must graduate high school to go to college and get a college degree so that they can get a good job. The businesses I work in can't find welders, can't find plumbers, can't find electricians. Those are good jobs. My daughter's high school, San Barlow, they had 9 CAD CAM stations. Every kid that graduated through that program had a job as soon as he wanted it. And I hired them at $40,000 when they're 18 years old. Pushing kids to school, to college, isn't always the right answer. How many physicists do we need? How many historians do we need? Getting the kids engaged in something they want to do, be that welding, be that CAD CAM, getting them involved. But the most important change we need is family involvement. The family has to be involved. That's the number one difference in a kid being successful or not. The breakdown of the family unit has cost a lot for our country and for our state.
John, you're absolutely right. I was actually raised in a homeschooling family. I was homeschooled K through 12, so I didn't spend one day in public school. I owe all that to my mom and my dad, who couldn't be here tonight. Yes, please.
Other homeschooling families here.
But as Christine and all 3 of them have touched on, we need to keep our students engaged. What is happening, like Christine said, between 3rd grade and high school? Students aren't remaining engaged. I know by the time I was done with high school and then college, I was burnt out. And when all they hear in their senior year is, okay, which school are you going to? It's daunting, and people, it's hard for students to push through. I think we need to be pushing more AP, more advanced placement, more apprenticeships, like John said. I think keeping students engaged and pushing them toward the skills and the academics that they have their talents in at an early age is important. Instead of waiting till senior year, let's get them engaged in what their strengths are in middle school. Are they more inclined toward mathematics and science? Are they better suited for something else? Keeping students interested in what they're doing and entertained and interested.
Okay, our next question is a 3-part question, and John Lee will go. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, Ken gets this.
Ken didn't speak. Sorry, Ken.
Thank you. There are moms and parents in this state, it doesn't matter what political party you are a member of, that truly believe that this issue is the civil rights issue of our day. And I'll tell you why. There are Democrats and independents and even Republicans in other states who are championing and just breaking down the walls of the education bureaucracy and expanding choice and expanding charter schools and districts, and it's like a petri dish. And their kids are thriving. they're responding immediately. And that's not happening here. Here, your education, the level of your education, the quality still depends on where you live, period. Depends on how much money you get and where you live. I'll read Ken's response. I support more choice options for children and believe a child's education dollars should follow them to the school of their choice, be it homeschool, public, private, charter, or high school to college bridge program. PERS has consumed over 50% of the increase in education funding in the last few years. So getting PERS under control would help put more dollars back in the classroom. But again, it's that bureaucracy. We have to introduce choice into the system, otherwise these kids are trapped in that system.
Okay, next question is a three-part question. In your opinion, what is the single most important issue as it relates to your district's constituents? How does that issue relate to the rest of Oregon? And how do you plan to address that issue?
I had to think a little hard on this one because we already dealt with PERS. So I'm going to come at it from a different orientation. I believe that one of the most important things to our district and to Oregon at large is the Portland-centric ideology that's being shoved down our throat, and which makes up most of the decisions in Salem. We know better than you. We can make decisions for you. We're a rural district. We're most of Clackamas County. We're at the urban-rural divide. What's good for Portland isn't necessarily and isn't often good for us. Legislators are more beholden to special interests, to the lobby, to unions, even Planned Parenthood, affect our lives every day. We have to create a new ideology. We need a conservative voice in Salem. We need good ideas to be presented that are good for farmers, nurserymen, builders, small business. Again, we need an effective government, we need an efficient government, and we need a transparent government.
Well, my answer is similar to John's. We do have a Portland-centric legislature in Salem that's cramming down their liberal agenda throughout Oregon, and it's hurting rural Oregon. One thing that's facing Clackamas County, and it is more of a Portland-centric issue, although it's occurring everywhere, it's population growth. And you've heard the term Portland creep. We got people coming down. I mean, Canby's growing exponentially. Canby, Molalla, Oregon City. And one of the challenges with that is, first of all, protecting private property rights, which I believe are sacred. So I'm not a big supporter of eminent domain. But then also at the same time, how do we deal with those growing pains moving forward? How do we streamline developers who are coming into places like Canby and the surrounding area, building homes? And how do we support equitable housing for individuals moving forward? The cost of living goes up, the cost of rent goes up. And I think part of that is streamlining and creating opportunities that allow developers to construct homes more efficiently and cost effectively.
Ken's response is, what I hear most from people in the district is that they want good paying jobs in Clackamas County and they want the 205 widened without having to pay tolls. These things go hand in hand. Oregonians already pay some of the highest gas taxes in the nation, so tolling people to go to work makes no sense. Clackamas County residents would be disproportionately impacted by tolls because the majority of people in Clackamas have to commute to Portland or Washington County for work. The legislature can play a role in helping in job creation by changing the land use system to allow Clackamas to site more industrial, shovel-ready lands for jobs. I would support a bill or ballot measure that repeals tolling for our freeways, and I'd support land use changes that gets more land in the mix for job creation.
So this question for me goes to the heart of why I am running, and also why I am a Republican. And not surprisingly, it's what you've heard up here a little bit, and it's what I've heard on the doors. It's the single word disrespect. Salem does not respect the voters in House District 39, and lots of other places outside of Portland. Our state is run by one party right now, and specifically not just one party, but by one city. And along the way to this lopsided, narrow view that has resulted in Oregon being tagged as one of the most aggressively liberal states in the nation, has come this oozing stench of disrespect. Can I say that? I think it stinks, and I think it's everywhere. Politicians in charge in Salem are not straight with voters right now. They tell the version of the story that suits their politics, and they don't listen. And sometimes they run smear campaigns. Sometimes they change the rules. Sometimes they break the rules. And there's no other word for it in my thinking but the word disrespect. Salem is telling voters in our district, I don't respect you enough to let you keep what you earn. I don't respect your values, so I'm going to silence your voice. I don't respect your work, so I'm going to add regulations and fees and taxes just on you to make it harder for you to do that work. I don't respect your faith, so I'm going to push it out of the public square. I'm going to chain you to your public school that is failing your kids. Does it sound familiar? It's disrespectful. It's all of it is. It's dividing us, it's diminishing us, and it's time for it to stop. I've devoted my professional career to service, whether it was a service as a gatekeeper for legislation and budget negotiations, for the Republican Speaker of the House, or for small businesses and community groups. But this job, serving as your state representative, is about service, and most of all for me, it's about respect. Respecting and standing up for our community, our values, our families, and our faith. I am unwavering in my commitment to this district. Constituents who interact with my office can expect help when they need it, full and open access to information that lets them participate effectively, and in all cases, to be treated with the respect that they deserve, the respect you deserve.
It's like she's turned this. You practice these at home. Are you ready?
No.
Okay. The next question. You ready? Okay. This is kind of a fun, creative question. Seth, if elected, what would be the first bill you would draft?
I would want it to be something that, one, I have a deep understanding of. I would want it to be something that could garner, bipartisan support. And I would want it to be something that is a pressing issue right now. And luckily, we do have a Secretary of State, Dennis Richardson, who's working hard on audits. But I think when it comes to DHS, they need to be singled out. And I think one thing that I would want to do is mandate routine, in-depth, detailed audits of DHS until the problem's solved. Audit them, find out what's going on, make fixes, move forward, audit them again until the problem is fixed. We shouldn't have 6-week stays in emergency rooms. We shouldn't have children being left with abusive foster parents and abusive parents. We shouldn't have slaps on the wrist for parents who are starving children to death, as happened down in Salem. Some foster parents were given 2 years for starving their foster children. This sort of stuff, and we hear about the morale issues and the cultural problems at DHS. Kate Brown, her one issue was, let's just slap some more money, give more money to DHS. That was her one answer. And Dennis Richardson is out there actually auditing. I think we need a bill that actually streamlines that, and focuses on DHS until the problem's solved.
This is Ken's response. One of my top priorities is to ensure that we make good on the promise to voters who passed Measure 96, the Oregon Veterans Lottery Bill, and fully fund the bill. Governor Brown's budget cut $10 million, and the legislature's final budget cut almost $5 million. I draft a budget bill that ensures full funding with funds directed to critical areas of support needed, particularly housing and veterans homelessness. For several years, I've run a program that provides homeless veterans with a duffel bag stocked with basic necessities like socks, underwear, and hygiene items. But what these folks really need is a roof over their head, access to basic health care, and a job. That's what Measure 96 was supposed to do. And addressing the legislature's failure to fund a voter-approved measure is one of my first goals. This district has an outsized population of men and women who've served in the military compared to other parts of the metro area. And they'll know they have a strong advocate in me should I be elected.
So a few weeks back, I knocked on a door and I saw a woman through her window that was in a recliner with an Afghan over her. It clearly would have been uncomfortable for her to get up and come to the door. So I waved through the window and I leave my materials and I go. And the next day, my phone rings and it's her on the phone. And she said, thanks for dropping off your materials. I just couldn't get up, but I really want to talk to you. And she proceeds to tell me this story about her and her husband. They bought this house, they raised their kids. It was their plan to live out their senior years together in their family home, but they were faced with these steep, unexpected medical bills that they couldn't pay, and she was worried about the price of their property taxes. That, in a growing community and increased property taxes, their plans were gonna change quickly. And she didn't feel like she could pay those property taxes, so she didn't feel like she could afford to stay, but she knew she couldn't afford to go anywhere else. And so my first bill in the session would be to help people like Sherry stay in her home. Figure out what is it we can do for our seniors who have paid taxes their whole lives and who are good members of our community, but for whatever reason, when you talk about growth and all the changes in our community, are suddenly priced out of staying in their homes. And because I want to change the way Salem operates, if I have more than 30 seconds, I have 30 seconds. I want to do one quick thing. You guys don't know this, but there's this little tiny thing called House Rules. And House Rules get adopted. It's the first thing they vote on, right? And they're the rules to the game. The rules to the game, it says, when do you have to post notice? Who gets to decide who's on committees? How does this whole process work? I think the House Rules are cutting us out. 1 hour notice isn't enough. So my first vote, the thing that I would want to do very first out of the gate, would try to change the rules of the game because we deserve a voice.
First bill, I believe in a citizen legislature, not career politicians. In 1991, Measure 3 passed, enacting term limits for both federal and state office holders. It passed 2-1. Unfortunately, in 1995, the U.S. Supreme Court said the federal part of that really wasn't constitutional, but they were silent on the state side. In 97, the Ninth Circuit Court, our good friends, right, upheld California's term limits. And so we had to reverse in Oregon and actually accept them. But then our Supreme Court, again, our good friends, the Oregon Supreme Court in 2002, ruled Measure 3 unconstitutional because of procedural matters. If I remember right, it's the first time it came up about 2 issues being on one measure, the federal and the state. So in 2006, Measure 45 was minimally defeated by labor unions and lobbyists, and it would allow 3 House terms and 2 Senate terms, or 14 years in total. The first bill that I would bring up is term limits, and I believe that 2019, 2020, we need to revisit that issue and return to a citizen legislature.
Did you ask it?
This is the final
Oh,
question.
I'm like,
and you're
I
first.
remember the question.
Okay. Another creative question, and this is the last question. If you could write a bill to repeal a recently passed law, what would it be?
Ken's response is, one of the things you learn in an MBA program is that the business environment created by government can make or break a small business. I would absolutely stand in repealing Senate Bill 1528, the disconnect from the small business tax code. It will cost over 400,000 Oregon small businesses, $258 million, that's just in the first year. It's $1 billion over 6 years. And it creates another crony-style tax credit giveaway for people who are well-connected. We just saw a guy go to jail for defrauding Oregonians in a tax credit scheme. We don't need more opportunities for taxpayers to be scammed. Small businesses need to keep more of their hard-earned money, not see it siphoned off for pet projects and programs that don't benefit a majority of Oregonians.
So Salem is a target-rich environment for this question. I am proud to have the endorsement of Oregon Right to Life in this race, and they oppose changes to Oregon's advanced directive laws to protect life in 2018. I would repeal House Bill 4135. The legislation was billed as a needed update to Oregon's advanced directive law. This is the law that lets a person who can't speak for themselves assign someone to direct their medical care on their behalf. It also gives them the chance to share their wishes for end-of-life care. Simple, easy fix, hasn't been fixed in a while, let's get that done. But the bill didn't stop there. For those living with a chronic condition that renders them incapable of speaking, who may not be able to recognize their families or feed themselves, House Bill 4135 took away the limitations and removed the sideboards for when someone could make life-ending medical decisions, including when to withhold food and water. Legislators were told by their attorneys in the Capitol this was not in the bill, nothing to worry about, this will not happen. And I'm here to tell you from my experience that I believe otherwise. My mom had multiple sclerosis. She was diagnosed when she was 30. I was 9 years old at the time, and she was 61 when she died. She'd been bedbound for 5 years. Leading up to that, 3 of those final years were with a feeding tube. My mom had an advanced directive. But when she went into the hospital for what became the last time, they attempted to deny nutrition and fluids through her tube. It was their interpretation of no life-saving measures, but these were not her wishes. The hospital would have gladly denied her nutrition through her feeding tube while pumping her with morphine for a slow, hazy, and in my opinion, cruel goodbye. The doctor looked at my mom and saw an impossible, unbearable life. I looked at her and I saw a strong woman with a will to live, who was deeply loved and who loved deeply. If we had not been there, the hospital staff would have continued to withhold food and water. I can only imagine how an exposed Alzheimer's patient could be exposed to misuse of this new open-ended authority to make end-of-life decisions. I would protect our most vulnerable, I would honor and respect life, and I would repeal 4135.
I agree with Christine. This is a target-rich environment. There were so many bad laws last session, let alone in the last few years. It amazes me how many times Democrats say, big corporations bad, small business good, and then pass law after law after law that lets the large corporations get away with it and punishes small corporations like mine. We can start with the healthcare tax. Intel's not paying it, unions aren't paying it, small business like me is paying it. But I got to go back to SB 1528. Disengaging from the federal tax law is not only wrong, it's punishing wrong. Small businesses are the employment engine of our state. We don't want to take money from them. We want to give them more money so they can hire more people, invest in more capital equipment, and build this state. So if I could wave my magic wand, it would be to repeal SB 1528.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, all those answers and then some. It's hard to choose just one. I would say pretty much any bill passed with sole Democrat support in the past 2 sessions needs to be repealed. But I would add specifically, and this is I'm very passionate about this issue. I grew up volunteering and raising money for the local pregnancy care centers in Canby and Molalla. I am passionately pro-life. And the $10 million that was allocated toward your tax dollars going toward abortion funding is outrageous. The average, in fact, the majority of voters do not support it. Democrats, Republicans, Independents don't support putting their tax dollars toward abortion, and I think it's grossly immoral.
Okay. Actually making pretty good time here. So that it concludes the question portion of this evening, and now we're going to move into some final comments. And each candidate will go back to the opening comment order, and you'll have 3 minutes to have some closing comments, and we'll start with Lindsay's delivery of Commander Kraft's closing comments.
So Ken did not prepare closing comments, so I'm going to talk a little bit about him because I'm also a voter and a Republican. As a political consultant, I deal with a lot of candidates. I've never met someone who was willing to knock on doors and put up signs as an amputee. That's a first for me. But he's out there with one leg, and he's getting it done, and I think that's so impressive. Most of our meetings have been towards the end of the day, and I show up and I'm tired. I've been doing mom duties and work duties, and he's one of those people that is just full of energy. It's endless, and he inspires you, and you want to do better for him just because of who he is. So I'm here on a volunteer basis because I simply believe in the guy. I don't think because of his background that there's any question about his core beliefs. That's something I worry about just as a voter. You know, who am I electing? What are their core beliefs? It kind of gives you an idea of how they're going to vote, even on complicated issues. I don't worry about that with him. I know what his core beliefs are. You've seen it through his actions, not just his words. You've seen it in his past commitments and what he's done to serve this country and what he's done since he's come back. Despite multiple surgeries and hardships that he's had, he is still out there pounding the pavement, serving his community and serving his fellow veterans. I think that's really honorable. You know, we need somebody who goes down there not because they're there for ego or they're there for notoriety or they simply want a badge or they want to feel important or they want to be, you know, loved by the lobby. We need somebody who's down there because they're there for cause, and we're the cause, right? They walk into that floor, they walk into that room, and they think of us first. That's somebody that we need down there. And I think that's truly who this person is, Ken Kraft. I think it's what he embodies. And I know that he would be honored and humbled to have your vote.
Tonight you've heard from all 4 candidates on a wide variety of issues, and I hope you learned something about each of us. Like most debates, I'm pretty sure most of you came in here with a candidate already in mind, and very few minds may have been changed. But ultimately, this isn't about us. This is about you, your voice, your concerns, your issues. Frankly, House District 39 is not a swing district. Whoever you elect in the primary will be your representative. I believe that we need the most conservative person that we have that's demonstrated leadership to go to Salem for you. I believe we need a servant leader, someone that's been in the grassroots, been with the party, been with business leadership. Someone that has past elected and appointed experience. We need someone who will say what he believes and do what he says. Someone that will listen to you and be your voice in Salem. I've handed out literally thousands of these at the county fair, at the library, and this is what I believe. Why I am a Republican. I believe the strength of our nation lies with the individual, that each person's dignity, freedom, ability, and responsibility must be honored. I believe in equal rights, equal justice, and equal opportunity for all, regardless of race, creed, sex, age, or disability. I believe free enterprise, encouraging individual initiative, have brought this nation opportunity, economic growth, and prosperity. I believe government must practice fiscal responsibility and allow individuals to keep more of the money they earn. I believe the proper role of government is to provide for the people only those critical functions that cannot be performed by individuals or private organizations, and that the best government is that which governs least. I believe the most effective, responsible, and responsive government is government closest to the people. I believe Americans must retain the principles that have made us strong while developing new and innovative ideas to meet the challenging times. I believe the Republican Party best fits that. I hope that you'll agree with me that I'm your candidate and will vote for me May 15th. Together, we can make Oregon great again.
Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. I don't want to date myself, but Bill has actually been in public service longer than I've been alive. So, Bill, thank you for your service. Nobody is going to fill Representative Kennemer's shoes. Nobody up here is going to do that. One of us will replace him, though, and I would be honored to be that person. I've been endorsed by Dr. Monica Webby, who ran against Jeff Merkley 4 years ago for U.S. Senate. I've been endorsed by the Oregon Tea Party. I've been endorsed by the Parents Education Association, who are actually right here in Canby. And I've been endorsed by Mark Callahan, who ran for Senate 2 years ago. My core values: I'm pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, I believe in lower taxes, and I believe in limited government, and I'd be honored to have your vote and your support. Thank you very much.
There's the wrong order. Yep. We're back to that order.
I know, it's confusing. So, first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming and listening to all of this policy talk and hearing us all out for as long as you have been here tonight. I appreciate that. It's great to be here. It's an honor to be here. And thank you again, Tracy and Clackamas County Republican Party, for putting this on and hosting this. I believe that we must hold government accountable. We must support jobs. We must improve our high school dropout rates. And we have to fight efforts to raise taxes. So the thing that you guys don't yet know about me is that when I was growing up and my dad lost his job and we moved around a lot, there's some things about being a kid who, by anyone's standards, is poor. It's a blessing. It's a gift. So with that struggle in my life came the opportunity to have new clothes when I got a job, to have a car when I could pay for it, to have the car repaired when I learned how to fix it myself. I couldn't afford to have someone do it for me. I had the opportunity to put myself through college. I had the opportunity to pay for my own wedding. I had the opportunity to find the money to scrape together for my first house. So my dad did not give me a pep talk when I was a kid and write me a check to cover my bills when things got hard. He prayed for me. He told me, "You've got it in you to succeed." He said, "You know what you are capable of. You know what you have to do. Go out there and do it." And I have to tell you, I know what I believe. I know what I'm capable of. And I am ready to be your next state representative for House District 39. I listen, I work hard, I am a reformer, and I will fight for you. I am unwavering in my commitment to service and to all of you in this district, and I am asking for your vote to be your next state representative for House District 39. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I want to thank you all again for coming this evening. And and supporting the candidate of your choice. You can do so. They have literature here. They have signs here. They probably have donation envelopes as well. We also have some for the party. If you are not registered to vote, you only have until April 27th to do so, to vote in this election. There's also voter registration forms over there. 24th, sorry. Okay, April 24th is the deadline for registration to vote in the May primary. So if you aren't registered, grab a registration form. If your neighbor's not registered, take a form to them. And with that, thank you all for coming. Good evening.